My name is Stuart from Utradea, and today we are going to be looking at Elon's offer to buy Twitter for $43 billion. I'll just do a quick walkthrough of the SEC filing, what I found to be quite insightful and entertaining from it. Then we'll jump over to our social sentiment dashboard, see what people are saying across Twitter and StockTwits, and then we'll wrap up with some final thoughts of what I think will happen. So stay tuned, it should be good. Before we jump into it, just want to say please like, subscribe, leave a comment below. Love doing these videos, love getting feedback from you guys. Super helpful and helps me make the videos better. So without further ado, let's jump in. Okay, so this was filed, I believe, early this morning on April 14th. Came across our real-time news feed, and essentially, if you guys haven't been paying attention to the Twitter and Elon Musk saga, I can go into that at a later time. We have another video about it, but we're going to look at his offer to buy Twitter for $43 billion. So what I've done is just pulled out kind of the key excerpts from the SEC filing. So essentially, Elon formally filed a 13D SEC filing, which says his intention to formally buy Twitter, or his offer to buy Twitter. And essentially, the Twitter board has to determine whether or not they want to accept this offer. What's interesting is there's kind of two interesting pieces at play here. First is kind of his initial letter to the chairman of the board regarding the offer, and then the second are kind of a few highlights between which I found quite interesting. But first, talking about the offer to the board. So essentially, it's just the formal offer. So he wants to buy 100% of Twitter at $54.20 per share. As he said, it's a 54% premium over the day before he invested in Twitter. But what's interesting, I believe the Twitter is trading at about $43, $44 a share right now. So really not that much of a premium if you're a current shareholder, but it's always good. Obviously, if you bought in at levels lower than $54 a share, you'd potentially be happy with a buyout. Okay, the big topic is obviously around free speech. Elon, for the last few weeks, and actually for majority of his time, has always been pro free speech. He loves using Twitter as a platform to share his thoughts. We've seen kind of his impact with Tesla, with Dogecoin, and a number of stocks in that regard. But for him to take over Twitter, bring it private, and then ultimately have full control over the platform would be quite interesting. As he stated publicly, he wants to focus on maintaining or improving free speech, but that's something to be seen. The second thing is the buyout premium. So as he mentioned, he's saying it's a 54 premium before the day he began investing in Twitter, but realistically his offer is a premium based on what the share price is today, right? So really it's like a 15% premium, which is decent, but nothing, outstanding. The next interesting part about the filing, and again, this filing, as it was in the actual SEC document, is here italicized, but essentially says it should go private because he thinks it's the best move for Twitter as a platform. But what's really funny is he essentially says, I am not playing the back and forth game. I have moved straight to the end. It's a high price and your shareholders will love it. I don't fully believe that all shareholders will love it, but and then he says, if the deal doesn't work, given that I don't have confidence in management, nor do I believe I can drive the necessary change in the public market, I would need to reconsider my position as a shareholder. So essentially, it's a threat that if they don't accept his offer, he will sell his shares. What's funny is he then notes and says, this is not a threat. It's simply not a good investment without the changes that need to be made. I don't know if that really absolves him or of this being a threat, but that's a pretty thinly veiled threat. So yeah, the final offer, I think kind of the wording is pretty funny, but I think it's a decent negotiation tactic. The more interesting part is kind of the threat. So if he does decide to, or I should say, if the company and the board decides not to accept his offer, then he will likely sell. We don't know if he'll actually sell, but he's threatening to sell. And I would expect the stock price to drop significantly based on that. So there's really kind of a few things to consider. If you're a current Twitter shareholder, I would think, and this is purely from a financial standpoint, you'd want the buyout to go through. If you're not a fan of Elon, maybe you don't want that. If you like the platform the way it is, you might not want him to buy it out. But then there's the consideration of the shares potentially tanking if he does decide to sell. So really kind of some major options to consider. Okay, so this is as of kind of a little afternoon going through this, but let's jump over and see what's been happening the last little while. So right now, the #1 trending ticker on Twitter is Twitter. Makes sense. This is huge news for the platform. What we can do is see essentially the live feed of tweets that people are sending out. Let's look at some of the main influential tweets. Yeah, as I mentioned, so obviously Elon offered to buy Twitter. I think I saw a tweet somewhere saying that the board is deciding after hours today if they're going to accept the offer or not. This is interesting. So Prince Al Walid, the second largest Twitter shareholder, is rejecting the offer. If I understand correctly, it will go to a vote, and I believe they just need 51% for it to pass. So will be interesting to see if the board accepts, and then if shareholders accept the offer. Just jumping back to kind of what's going on the last little while. I'm going to look at posts as well as impressions. So, a few things happening the last 72 hours if we go over a 2-week view. I did a video a while back, and I'll link it below, but essentially it was talking about his initial disclosure in Twitter. And so we can see kind of leading up to that date, not a ton of chatter about Twitter, the stock itself. Then the disclosures released that he owns 9%, a little over 9%. Boom, we see the big pop, getting a lot of traction, attention, settles down. This is kind of last week. A little bit of a bump here as he's deciding whether or not to join the Twitter board, if the board will accept him. And then, as I mentioned, early this morning, we find out that he actually filed the 13D with the offer to buy Twitter out. So that's what's caused this massive spike. What I'll do is just show the price over the last little while because I think it is quite interesting. Go to the 2 weeks. So as I mentioned, same thing. When it was announced that he owned a significant chunk, a little over 9%, the day before Twitter closed at $39, it opened at just close to $50 a share. Since then, it's dropped off. A bit of a bump up around the news that he'd potentially join the board. Obviously decided not to. Stock price dropped a little bit, and then today we saw a bit of a jump based on the news that he wants to take it private. So hopefully you guys found this useful. I will link the blog that I posted below. Also link the social sentiment dashboard. Super useful to keep track of what's going on. You can use it for other stocks too, but it's been extremely helpful for tracking Twitter as an investment. Thanks for watching, and look forward to hearing from you guys. Thanks.